Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Good, Zach. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. We just have a couple more minutes and then we can get started with your presentation here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Been a busy morning, I take it.
Yeah, it's been jam-packed with some great sessions so far. So, no pressure, right?
I was just going to say no pressure. Well, if I fall on my face, Kelly will take over for me.
Well, that's why we're seated, right?
That's it. Yes, we are.
Okay. So it looks like, yeah, we're still getting people coming in from the waiting room here. It's about another minute.
Okay.
Let me know whenever you're ready for me to share my screen.
Yeah, if you want to go ahead and share the slides, that would be good.
Awesome. Happy to.
Okay, get them up there.
Give a thumbs up if you can see. Are we good?
I can see them.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
Just holding a little bit longer, making sure everyone gets in here. Okay, well, I do have top of the hour, so I think we can go ahead and get started. All right, so welcome back to our long-term care Halloween day. Good to see everyone sticking around. Our next presenter is from our friends at OneAmerica. Jeff Levin, Vice President of Distribution, is here with You Won't Spook Your Clients. Jeff, we're really looking forward to your presentation today. Take it away.
Thanks, Zach, very much. Well, I guess I'm the first speaker to cross over into that additional time zone. So depending on where you are, good morning or good afternoon. As Zach said, my name is Jeff Levin, and I lead distribution of sales for our asset-based long-term care products at OneAmerica. And while you can't see her, or maybe she still has her screen on, Kelly Tingle, our public relations manager, is also on this call to help me today. And Kelly really deserves the credit for the survey and the results that we're going to be sharing with you. She's also my backup in case we experience some technical difficulties. And since it's Halloween, you never know about gremlins. Thanks for joining today. Thanks for welcoming us into your home or your office, or some of the pictures I saw, your boat or being next to your pet. Certainly an unintended consequence or opportunity of working with Zoom. And certainly a big thank you to NAIFA and the LECP, the Limited and Extended Care Planning Center. And just another kind of round of applause, if you will, for Carol and Megan on their presentation. That great information. It's been enjoyable to listen today. So Kelly, if we can move into the next slide. At some point in their lives, most people are going to need long-term care support. And this research study identifies how LTC fits into the future, along with the level and comprehension of those necessary steps. And today, we'll share some of the results of this study with you, and we'll think about how this data can help you better connect with your clients or potential clients. At any time you want to view the full survey, you can click or scan the QR code on the bottom of the pages. Earlier this year, OneAmerica collaborated with Hanover Research to survey more than 1,000 consumers about the perception behaviors related to long-term care planning. The LTC survey identified consumers' comprehension and perspectives of cost, preparation and confidence to implement a long-term care plan, as well as their preference on asset-based long-term care protection, and really who influences their decisions when it comes to long-term care. The survey results from OneAmerica signify that LTC is not top of mind for most consumers. And this finding proves even more important considering that tomorrow, as we begin the month of November, it's also National Long-Term Care Awareness Month. We are very excited to share the results of these surveys. This information is new to me, so we can do a bit of exploring together. And please feel free to ask questions or provide your thoughts. For those of you that are statisticians, Kelly was scrolling through first few slides to kind of talk to you about how we segmented the survey and statistically significant differences and so forth. And again, you can find all that information if you want to click on one of the QR codes. So again, our survey was administered in association with Hanover Research, and we distributed online to consumers recruited via a third-party provider. As mentioned earlier, the analysis includes 978 respondents, and it features data cleaning and quality control. So the respondents were all at least 40 years old, and they were currently planning for the retirement era of their lives. The consumers who completed the survey or anyone in their immediate family did not work for insurance companies. Okay, so let's kind of jump into this. Let's begin our conversation today with a quote, and note that word conversation. It's probably something you've been hearing all morning, and it's something that we're going to come back to. Rosalind Carter, the former First Lady of the United States, said the following: "I like to say that there are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers." So let's just think about that just for a moment. What we're saying is at some point in our lives, we're either going to be caregivers or we're going to be care recipients. And maybe it's going to be both. Whether it's for aging parents, family members, perhaps our spouse, maybe a friend or a neighbor, we will all be responsible for providing care. Now, that care could be physical, that care might be emotional, it could be financial. And statistics show there is a considerable chance that someday we too may need that type of care. There's this long-standing belief that consumers don't like to talk about long-term care, whether it's providing care or needing care. It's almost as if talking about care implies that it's going to happen. It's like that direct cause and effect. And if simply talking about something makes it happen, then let's start talking about winning the lottery, if it were that simple. And conversely, not talking about it or avoiding it doesn't necessarily mean that it won't happen either. So this is not a trick, it's not a treat, and it can be scary, but hopefully by the time our conversation finishes today, long-term care won't be as scary as many people perceive that to be. A few minutes ago, I shared with you a belief that consumers don't want to talk about long-term care. To be clear, it's not that they don't want to talk about long-term care, it's that they don't want to talk about being the person who may someday need care. They do, however, talk about long-term care. A friend of mine was recently golfing with 3 other people, and he said for the entire 5 hours, the entire round, they did nothing but talk about long-term care. It was about a neighbor, it was about a friend, it was about a family member. It was about what type of care was needed, how much it was going to cost, how long it was going to last. And toward the end, he said they all talked about what type of planning they had done. Anybody want to take a guess about how much that was? 0. Everybody was talking about it, but no one had done any planning on their own. So it's not that people aren't talking about long-term care. It's really that people aren't taking action when it comes to long-term care. From our recent study, we learned that family is highly influential in most people's decisions around long-term care. Family members are both the most trusted and most consulted partners when it comes to long-term care discussions. And following family members, consumers would most trust financial services professionals at 40% and doctors at 39% when it came to this type of discussion. Notably, however, very few had actually had the conversation. So while 40% of the people felt they could trust their financial services professional, only 18% had actually had a conversation. And while 39% said they would trust their doctor, only 7% have actually had a conversation. So what that means is 4 out of 5 people, 4 out of 5 can benefit from you as an insurance or a financial services professional just having the conversation. And there it is again, that word, conversation. So if we move on, when we think about what people do when it comes to planning for their future, saving enough money for retirement, eliminating debt, and creating liquid emergency funds rounded out the top 3 choices that consumers placed as most important when planning for their financial future. These actions clearly show that people are concerned about having money and not running out of their kind of monthly paycheck as they move into retirement. But what needs to be included in those conversations is the important role that LTC planning has when they are working so hard to protect what they've already accumulated. Of those citing long-term care as important, 66% said their motivation in purchasing long-term care was to remove the financial burden from family and to avoid financial devastation. So here's an interesting observation. When we discuss retirement, it's usually in the context of having the financial ability to live after we've kind of concluded our career. And yet, when you ask people about that emergency fund or that rainy day fund, it's most often tied to an unforeseen medical expense, an event such as long-term care. Similarly, LTC planning is specific planning and preparing for an event. So when we look at these 4 buckets, really 3 out of the buckets really are about some type of a concern when it comes to long-term care planning. Moving on to the next slide, this is really where, if you will, the wheels start to fall off the bus. This is where the math, or shall I say, the consumer, stops making sense. 79% of consumers expect their partner or their children to provide their long-term care. More specifically, 45% expect a partner to help them, and 34% expect a child to provide those types of care services. Having family you can depend on is comforting, but asking loved ones to become your caregiver is not necessarily a decision that should be made lightly. Will they be able to take on these responsibilities in addition to their current workload? Candidly, do they even know that it's part of the plan? I have 2 adult sons and 1 daughter who's getting ready to head off to college. My oldest son lives about 15 minutes away from me. He's a great kid. He says, Dad, if you ever need anything, I'll be there to help you. This is the same kid that lives 15 minutes away and can't come over and help mow the lawn. So having a conversation, if it's going to involve family members, is a pretty important thing to do. Now, what's interesting about this slide is it is in direct contrast to that previous sentiment, where 66% said their motivation in purchasing long-term care was to remove the financial burden and avoid financial devastation. And by the way, 53% of people expect to receive care at home, and 63% expect to pay for it with personal savings. So all of this information, all of these numbers don't necessarily track with one another. If you turn to the next slide, 69% of consumers with firsthand LTC experience from a close family member say that the recipient's planning wasn't enough. So what do we do with all of these numbers that don't jive, that don't kind of sync with one another? What are they saying? Well, to be clear, they're saying that consumers don't talk to people when it comes to long-term care planning, maybe with the exception of their family members. They cite not wanting to be a burden when it comes to needing a family person to help provide that care. In the event of an unexpected illness or sickness, they actually do plan on needing help from a family member. And yet 69% of them say that even with all that, they know that it's not enough planning. So these statistics and findings, while maybe not in agreement or support of one another, do point to one very consistent message. And that's that consumers want and need help when discussing long-term care. All of these statistics, they're great when it comes to a viewpoint. At best, they're relevant. They're a snapshot of a group of consumers' beliefs and feelings. And while these statistics may not matter, they do have value in reassuring and supporting our knowledge, helping us make some decisions. But at the end of the day, what really matters most are your clients. And let's face it, your clients, I don't think they would say they're statistics. I don't think they would say that they're averages. And what we know is that statistics, they don't explain how to design a solution. They don't explain how to fund a solution. They don't outline what could happen if a written plan is not in place. And statistics sure don't provide care. We all know that they don't make a sale. I am a very strong advocate and proponent of long-term care planning. And while as a sales leader, it may be sacrilegious to say, I actually don't believe that long-term care insurance is right for everybody. That's what I believe. When I first started in this industry in 1990, we used to say there were three things that you needed to purchase long-term care. You needed health, wealth, and a desire to protect it. And that hasn't changed. That's still true today. And because of the need for all three, many people can't purchase long-term care due to health reasons. They're just not an insurable risk. But what I do believe, while long-term care insurance might not be the right for everybody, I do believe that the ability to make an educated decision when it comes to planning is really the only way to ensure that clients are educated about long-term care and the range of available solutions. And that comes to, again, you having the conversation. So there it is. It's kind of like Beetlejuice. If you've seen the film, we just said conversation 3 times in a row, and I'm waiting for Michael Keaton to pop off the screen. Kind of had to get my Halloween reference in there with you. But as I said, while I don't believe long-term care insurance may be the right thing for everybody, I do believe that 100% of your clients need to have a conversation with you about long-term care. Conversation, you being the expert, providing information, helping them with fact-finding, providing guidance and direction. And so with anything that we've learned so far in our first 15 minutes together, what we have found is that people are simply not having that conversation. That's where everybody struggles. So how do you start those conversations? Well, it's no different than some of the questions that sometimes we all face. So I would ask that you start with yourself. Think for just a moment. Picture in your mind, what would it look like if you needed long-term care? Where are you? How is your care being received? Who are you surrounded by? When we think about long-term care, we're envisioning a lifestyle for ourselves, maybe for our loved ones, for our spouse, and we want to make sure it plays out exactly as we see it, whether it's tomorrow or whether it's 20 or 30 years from now. We want to be able to envision what that care looks like and plan for that type of care. Think about every important decision that you've made so far in your life. Where did you go to college? What type of career did you want to pursue? Who did you want to marry? Did you want to get married? Where do you want to work? Where do you want to live? These are all life-changing decisions. We didn't let somebody else make these decisions for us. So why would we let someone else make the decision as to how and where we're going to receive care or who's going to pay for that care? This is a really easy way to start a conversation. Just ask them, again, what would it look like if you needed long-term care? Cut straight to it. It's the same for your clients. Now, a very good friend of mine and a peer that I get to work with, Dave Soares, had a mentor. And Dave's mentor told him to never forget that we are in the business of courageous conversations. All of us on this call today, we do what no others will do. We have those courageous conversations. Here's another way to start the conversation. Don't lead with long-term care as being a health concern, or for that matter, don't even lead with long-term care as being a need. Instead, reframe that conversation and make it about income. There's a book called What Retirees Want, A Holistic View of Life's Third Age by Ken Dykewald. And in his book, he says retirees' greatest financial concerns are costly health issues, rising cost of living, supporting their lifestyle, and outliving their savings. That is the number one concern when it comes to retirement, outliving your savings. When we work with financial professionals, one of the main goals is to save enough to be able to live the lifestyle we envision after we stop working. Traditionally, that was what was called retirement. In the accumulation phase or in our working years, we're saving. And then in retirement or in the distribution phase, we're spending. In his book, Dykewald shares, retirement was often viewed as a time of gradual decline and financial contraction. But thanks to increased lifespans and better health today, retirees are experiencing a distinct and rewarding phase of life. They're ready to explore new activities, new meanings, and new opportunities, whether it's travel, philanthropy, family, purpose, or as he calls it, an encore career. All of those are possible. And if you've planned successfully, then you will have the income that you need to support that third stage of life. However, an unforeseen event not properly planned for, like long-term care, could have an impact on that income. And that is where we get concerned about outliving our savings. Long-term care planning is really just that. It is about income. It's identifying solutions that provide income when the need for care becomes a reality. And in many instances, that planning is some type of financial instrument. It's all about using pennies to pay for dollars. Today's asset-based long-term care solutions allow consumers to reposition existing assets to cover risks that they may not have previously planned for or just hadn't considered at the time. Maybe in younger years, we're so busy trying to save with 529 plans for college, put money into our own 401ks. We're busy with health expenses and all of the things that come with, family and children being in school, that long-term care is not at the front of the line when it comes to needs. But as life changes and some of those other concerns or needs have been satisfied, long-term care becomes more prevalent. So why wouldn't you take maybe an existing asset that had been established for one purpose and is no longer needed and reposition it for another solution to help protect things that hadn't been considered? For instance, reposition an existing annuity. Maybe that annuity has significant growth in it. Take that annuity, reposition it into a new Pension Protection Act annuity. That annuity, if it needed to be used for long-term care, those dollars are then tax-free, helping to not have to worry about all of that gain, because if those dollars are used for long-term care, again, they are tax-free. This will solve multiple risks moving forward. So again, another thought when it comes to long-term care conversations, think about it from an income perspective. Next, as a third idea, we can move on to the next slide, Kelly. When we talk about long-term care, or we present long-term care as part of a holistic plan, one of our wholesalers, Kevin Riley, talks about 4 positive words that should be used in every conversation: effective, efficient, control, and access. Ask anyone who's savvy with their money, and they'll tell you there are 3 things that are important: preservation of capital, effective and efficient use of their assets, and maintaining access and control over both their money and the situation. We don't want someone else controlling our money or making our decisions. Now, let's put those 4 words into use. Let's figure out how they all tie together. We've all heard people say that in the event of a long-term care need, they're going to pay for care out of pocket. Again, it's most likely because they don't believe that care is ever going to be needed by them as an individual. 53% of respondents in our survey said that the cost of long-term care coverage is the most common barrier to purchasing long-term care. Your reply, yeah, you know what? I can see that you've given this some thought. In fact, the plan that you have in place may be effective. My compliments to you, since most people don't have a plan. In fact, most haven't even had a conversation about planning. But is it the most efficient plan? Additionally, you may have enough money that you could self-fund your own long-term care needs. But will that allow you to maintain access and control not only over your money, but over your entire lifestyle? Because as we know, as financial professionals, money does not mean access and control. We're talking about access to people and services and the ability to control the setting in which those services are received. So how do we put these 4 words together? Well, here's the takeaway. While money is important, and maybe you could pay for this on your own, I can show you an effective way to create greater efficiency while maintaining access and control over your money and care. And I guarantee you that no matter what the objection or the concern is that a consumer may have when it comes to long-term care planning, the use of these 4 words always puts it back into context. I can show you an effective way to create greater efficiency while maintaining access and control over your money and care. And by the way, when it comes to asset-based long-term care solutions, our studies showed that 94% of respondents like unchanging premiums, 92% of them like tax-free benefits, and 84% see value in passing on unused assets to their heirs. And that is something that an asset-based long-term care solution can help solve. Let's move into our next slide, and then let's open it up and see if we have any questions. I love this slide. Our marketing team was pretty humorous when they put it together. In closing, look, this is something that we all need to know. All of the facts, all of the statistics, all of the figures don't mean anything if they're not shared and they're not put into context for each of your clients. And it has to be framed in the way that it addresses their concerns and their needs. The best long-term care solution that you could ever have is one that is well thought out, is based on an educated decision. And in fact, you could probably say that the best long-term care plan is the one that's in place the day that somebody needs care. Long-term care solutions are about providing income when long-term care is needed. Some say that long-term care allows the family to provide a higher level of care, because when the issue is solved, we can focus on our loved ones. We can focus on the companionship and camaraderie and love without the physical and emotional strain or without the monetary concerns. But remember, nothing starts without a conversation. And that's really the underlying theme of NAIFA's day today. It's about having those conversations. And I want to remind everybody what we said earlier. We are in the business of having those courageous conversations. And so I want to end our time today. Gosh, that was a quick 30 minutes. I want to end our time today by thanking you. I want to thank you for the conversations that you've had and the conversations that you will have. We do what nobody else will do, and we make a difference every day in the lives of individuals and their families. So thank you. At the start, we shared with you that on each of these slides, there is a QR code. You can snap a picture of that QR code and get full access to the survey. It is an incredible wealth of knowledge. It's 50 pages long. And as I said, it addresses many of the statistics that we talked about today, but it also talks about other buying behaviors and concerns and what people are looking for in coverage. But at the end of the day, again, the thing that needs to happen is we need to have more conversations. So let me pause there and see if anybody has any questions or commentary. Would love to make this more of a dialogue now rather than talking at you. So again, thanks, and let's see what people have on their minds.
I do know there was one thing in the chat that kept coming up. They wanted to get the wording again of a phrase you shared. It started with "We are in business." There was a phrase you shared that really stuck with them.
We are in the business of courageous conversations. Is that what it was?
I think that's probably the one that they were looking for.
It's thanks, Zach. It's I learned that, and as I said, a friend of mine, his mentor taught him that. And it really, really summarizes what we do every single day. It is not an easy conversation to have. As we've seen in all of the statistics, most people are trying to avoid that conversation, and that's where we have to be courageous. Oh, and once more, the phrase with 4 words. Let me go back to that. Hang on one second. The phrase with 4 words. I can show you an effective way, so that's the use of the first word. I can show you an effective way to create greater efficiency while maintaining access and control over your money and care. I can show you an effective way to create greater efficiency while maintaining access and control over your money and care. So think about it. Somebody says, I don't need long-term care. I can pay for it out of pocket. You know what? You probably could. But what if I could show you an effective way that creates greater efficiency, allows you to maintain access and control over your money and care? Who wouldn't want to have that conversation? it's pretty powerful. So thanks. That was another great question.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. Kelly, do you think that we could also, is that the survey where they can get it? Okay. I was going to say we could put the QR code back on the screen, give everyone a second to get the thing here, but it looks like, yeah, it looks like the survey, Kelly shared a link. You're able to, but it also, yeah, if you would like to snap a photo of it with the QR code, it's right there on the bottom of the screen. We'll give everyone a second to do that. And I just also wanted to mention there was quite a buzz about the book you mentioned as well. The
oh, you know what, Zach, give me
What
one second.
Retirees
I'm gonna spin out of the camera for a minute. I'm gonna take it off the bookshelf, and I'll just hold it up here for everybody.
Perfect.
So this is a book. It's called What Retirees Want, and it's by Dr. Ken Dykewald, Dystwald. This is probably his third or fourth book. He's the author of Age Wave. He is an incredible speaker and presenter. I will tell you, he is very much a researcher when it comes to this field of expertise. And really what he talks about in this is life's third age. It's this idea that after we have gone through that first age of growing and our second age of working, there's a lot more to come when we retire, certainly with changes in health and people, living longer than they ever have. It's like, you could be in retirement conceivably longer than in the years you were working. And so what does that third age look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. Oh, I got a new message. Type the name of the book again. Yeah, I got it right here. What Retirees Want. And we got the quote as well. Look at that.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly.
All right. Is there any other questions? People, you can feel free to unmute as well and ask them directly. Yes, and Moselle also sent a link to the book as well. The 4 Types of Caregivers by Rosie Carter. This is what they're asking to repeat.
Oh, sure. Let me just get back to that too. Yeah, Rosalind Carter said, I like to say that there are only 4 kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. So Kelly's already got the slide back up for you. Pretty, it's a pretty simple statement, but it's pretty prolific at the same time.
I can relate. I'm sure we all can. Truly.
Yeah.
Any other questions in the chat? I'm not seeing any. Feel free to take that chat down. They're all just looking through that survey.
Well, as we said, it is great information. It's pretty amazing when, as a carrier, we can take a step back and go out and better understand what consumers are looking for, and not only what consumers are looking for from solutions, but what's on their mind. What do they think about? What are their concerns? The long-term care industry continues to expand every single day. It's not just about carriers building solutions. It's a lot more about providers and services. How do we keep people who need care to stay in their home longer? How do you work with people as that care scenario may progress? Possibly from not so great to worse, or maybe back to health again. It is an ever-growing and ever-changing industry, and when we can get an understanding of what's on consumers' minds, it really helps us as we think going forward. I will tell you a little bit of a secret since you're on this call. Kelly is actually engaging with Hanover Research as well. We're beginning our next study, and that will really be around producer mindsets. So what do all of you and your peers think about when it comes to long-term care, either presenting plans, or what do you feel is missing that is needed today? And it'll be an interesting marriage when we combine what the consumer thinks with what the producer thinks. But we've been in this business for more than 30 years, and as a thought leader, we too like to understand the concept of what's happening and where things are going. I like to call it looking around the corner to try and get an idea of what's coming.
We've got two great questions in the chat too. I want to draw attention to those real quick. Dan Altmeyer says, what about conversations about inflation's effect on long-term care? So we'll start with that one and then we'll go to Mazel's in just a moment.
Sure. Traditionally, look, I don't mean to do long-term care 101, but just in case there's somebody that's not familiar, there's a number of different types of long-term care available. And the beauty is that there are a number of different types available. There's what we would call standalone long-term care. Think about it in terms of like a term life insurance policy. You pay for a level of care and you keep paying for that level of care until you either need it or you decide you no longer need it. And then it just ends. It's like your auto insurance. When it ends, it ends. There's no buildup of cash value. It doesn't continue on. There's something called asset-based long-term care, which is typically a life contract, a whole life contract maybe, or an annuity that has some value. And then there's long-term care, and they tie together to determine a long-term care benefit. And the beauty behind that is if long-term care is never needed, that asset is still available and it's passed on to heirs. And then there's things like long-term care riders or critical illness to take care of all these other types of situations. So there's a lot available. When with the question around inflation, typically with asset-based long-term care, you didn't see a lot of people adding inflation. The idea was, again, how do I take this asset, reposition it to leverage it to cover something that I didn't need before? But in today's market, today's economy, where we know it is an inflationary market, people are looking at adding an inflation rider. Typically, you'll see those in the form of 3% compound, 5% compound to kind of keep up with the rising costs of care. And the beauty with most of these plans is it's a bucket of money concept. So the total pool of dollars continues to grow and helps to hopefully keep up with those costs of inflation. I know that at OneAmerica, we are seeing an increase of the number of people that are adding inflation to the programs. Kelly, you said there was a second question?
Yeah, so the second one in there is, what age do you think people should start planning?
Wow.
And I challenged everybody to answer that question, Jeff. I said, let's put our thoughts in the chat because we all do this. So what do you guys think? What do you think is the right age? And Jeff, obviously, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I'll give you my answer, but it's more of a company statistic. And then I'd love to hear what other people's thoughts are. The largest single kind of age band, if you will, demographic for OneAmerica, where we see the majority of our sales, is 55 to 59. When you go one age band on either side, so in other words, if you were to add 50 to 54 and then 60 to 64, so that age band, that is where significantly we see the most amount of sales. So I guess another way to say it is usually starting in your 50s up until about your mid 60s. Certainly coverage is available after that age and it's available before, but that's where the majority of the population is buying. I will tell you that usually every year that number comes down slightly. It may be a few months, maybe it's a year or two, but as people are living in the sandwich generation, which many of us are, meaning you have parents that are older, where you're possibly watching them grow older, maybe not being as mobile as they used to be. Maybe they're starting to need care. And at the same time, you're working with children, still in college, maybe even younger. You're in that sandwich generation. And because of that, we're all seeing the impact of care on our parents, and people are buying coverage much earlier than they ever had before. So
Lots of info in the chat, and I love it. But somebody did challenge you. They said, Jeff, we always said stats don't matter. So when did you first purchase your long-term care policy?
I appreciate that question. I purchased long-term care in my mid 40s. For me, I had finished kind of saving for the most part for college, and I was able to direct those dollars to something else that I hadn't been able to save for at that time. It's a little depressing, but most people will say, you're never healthier than you are today. I don't know, that's a little depressing, but when we think about long-term care, for the most part, there is some type of underwriting. There is truth. You will never be younger than you are today, and you will never be healthier than you are today. The younger you are, the less expensive the product will be, and hopefully the more healthier that you are. And
Is there an age that's
whoever said I looked like I was not, I was in my mid 40s, you are so kind.
Zach is your new best friend.
Thanks,
So
Zach.
Jeff, is there an amount that's too young? For example, if someone's in their 30s or early 40s, is it too young? How does that work?
Let me answer that from two perspectives. I don't know that there is an age that is too young if you have the income and the ability to purchase coverage early. I will tell you, though, that from a carrier's perspective, there is a concern about people buying too young. For instance, in my previous life, I worked with a carrier where it was standalone long-term care insurance, and you could buy it beginning at the age of 18. If someone's buying it at the age of 18, the insurance carrier is going to have concerns. Is there an underlying condition? Is there something genetic? Is there something in a family history that says, I better buy this now? It could be just really great, prudent planning, and power off to anybody who's 18 that's that smart and that thinking forward. But there's probably an age that's too young. Now, I will also tell you that with some of these policies, we have seen family members purchase it for grandchildren. We've seen family members purchase it for their own children. And so while that individual would have to go through underwriting, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to pay for it. Somebody else could pay for it on their behalf. And so sometimes we do see that for people at a younger age. This is a really good question. I haven't gotten that question in quite a long time.
So since I still get carded, maybe I'll hold off a few years.
Yeah. Zach, do you have a library card yet? You look very young yourself.
Waiting on my learner's permit.
I may start taking advantage of our stacking strategy. Jeff, do you want to share a little bit about that? Because I may, at 44, I may start investigating that as well.
Yeah, it really is a great idea. It's not something that most people tend to think about. When we think about purchasing insurance, we tend to think about it as a one and done, at least in the form of permanent insurance. We all know that sometimes you purchase a larger amount of term insurance when you're younger, you have young family, maybe you recently got married, and in the event of a premature death, it's pretty difficult to replace that income. So we tend to think about it a little bit more in terms of term insurance, but the stacking strategy is really this. It's purchasing the amount of coverage that you can afford at that moment in time, and then stacking additional policies on top as we grow older. So for instance, I shared that I purchased long-term care in my early 40s when I was getting closer to being done with college. Well, I purchased a smaller amount. There's nothing to say that as I grow closer to retirement, I don't add some coverage on that. Right before retirement, I add another policy, and then maybe later in life, I do reposition yet another asset, so that at the point when I'm most concerned about needing long-term care, and none of us know when or if that might happen, I have enough coverage in place to take care of the bigger picture than just a piece of it. But should something have happened, I had some coverage in place. And so the idea really, again, behind stacking is you do it pieces at a time. You don't have to do it all at once. Great question, Kelly. Thanks for bringing that up.
There was a question in the chat too about joint policies for long-term care. For example, if you have a spouse, and how does that work, or how do we talk to our customers about that?
Yeah, so there are a few carriers. OneAmerica is one of them that has a true joint policy. We actually insure two people on one contract, and what happens is both parties, both spouses, have access to the entire pool of money. So in the event that one of them needs care, or in the event that both of them need care, they can pull from that contract. And with OneAmerica, you can actually purchase a lifetime policy. And that is exactly what it is. If you needed care, and obviously it's not for a lifetime, but it just means that it doesn't end. It will continue on as long as somebody needs care. I do know there's another carrier that is looking at coming out with a shared benefit sometime in 2023. But the idea again is you both have access to a pool of dollars in the event that long-term care is needed.
Fantastic. Looks like there's another question just came in. How would the carrier coordinate multiple policies within the same carrier?
So typically the way, if you're stacking, it's easier to talk about if it's with one carrier. One carrier, obviously, depending on what type of policy is, whether it's reimbursement or indemnity, they'll pull from the first policy. If there's excess that's needed, they'll pull from the next and so forth. If there are multiple carriers, you have to read the contract language to say who's the primary, and typically that's the first policy that was purchased. Sometimes carriers don't combine, but it's just that'll be in the contract language. So it's something important to look at.
Fantastic. And then another, they just keep coming through. What percentage of patients in long-term care facilities are under 40?
What percentage of patients in long-term care facilities
Are under the age of 40?
Oh my goodness. I don't know the answer to that question, but what I do know is, long-term care is defined as needing assistance with activities of daily living or due to a cognitive impairment, at least in a tax qualified plan, which is expected to last for 90 days or longer. If you think about the number of younger people today, just anybody, it's a more active lifestyle today that may have a physical injury due to sports, maybe somebody who's older and had to have major hip replacement surgery or something like that. Oftentimes we don't really think about them being in a nursing home facility. Oftentimes they may leave a hospital and go to an assisted living facility where they can begin to get physical therapy and recuperative services before they head back home. So because of that definition, it's not always somebody that we think about, as that much older age in life. There could be plenty of people at a younger age. And very unfortunately, it's just the types of things that we see or we hear on the news, right? We know about plenty of people, and it's typically somebody who's a celebrity or something like that that's had a major trauma in life. The one that always comes to mind based on my age is Christopher Reeves. So, he clearly was in need of long-term care, and that was due to a riding accident on a horse. So I don't know the number about how many under the age of 40, but I'm sure it's bigger than we thought or would think.
We've got a couple more questions coming in, and I just want to say, if we don't get to your question, feel free to reach out to Jeff. He put his email in his name section in the Zoom square. Reach out to him. He will be happy to answer any questions that you have. I'll go ahead and take one more question because I know we're running tight on time and folks might be getting hungry. You might need a break before lunch and the next speaker. So the question was, what are your thoughts, Jeff, on the hybrid policies? For example, life, annuity, long-term care, if you had any pros and cons on those?
It's a great question. All of these have been phenomenal questions. I need to stop saying that because there hasn't been a great question. So I said this earlier, I am a firm believer in the best long-term care policy is the one that you have in place the day that you need care. I think there's advantages to both. I believe that the strongest advantage for standalone long-term care is you get the most bang for your buck. It is more of a term policy. You pay it until you no longer decide to use it or you no longer need it or the contract terms may run out, but it is absolutely the best way to get the most leverage for your dollar. That said, if you never use it, it just ends. I used to joke that people would always say, I pay all this money into my standalone long-term care policy, and what if I never use it? Well, it's kind of like your auto insurance. If you drove for 30 years and you had a perfect record, and now you're going to stop driving, you don't just go and drive into a tree to collect some money. That's just the way that the terms of the contract work. The benefit and the beauty of a hybrid product is that in the event that you don't need long-term care, so if you purchased a hybrid product with a life chassis, meaning there's a life insurance component to it, and you never needed long-term care, well, then that life insurance component just passes to your beneficiaries, to your heirs, to your estate. And so it's not a use it or lose it type of policy. But again, it's really dependent on who the individual is. And not unlike life insurance, I have seen people purchase smaller hybrid policies and then add a long-term care standalone policy to that. They wanted some permanent protection, some permanent coverage, but they wanted the ability to add some more at a lesser price. If you look at statistics today, the purchase of hybrid policies is far outpacing the purchase of individual standalone policies, but that's also because there are a lot more hybrid providers in this marketplace today than there were individual. And when I started in the industry 30 years ago, it was the exact opposite. So kind of good and bad to both, but forward thinking and forward planning is always going to win out over no planning at all. I like to say it's better to be underinsured than to not be insured.
That's the truth for sure. Well, all good information. And Jeff and Kelly, both of you, thank you so much for being on here today and sharing your wisdom and your slides. We are going to now move over to another break, and we will be back with another session by Carol Golden. And Jeff, we're hearing lots of great feedback in the chat. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to leave us with?
No, you know what? Thank you for taking the time. Zach, thank you to you for hosting. Thanks to NAIFA, and thanks to everybody who listened. It is a tough job that you do, and it does not go underappreciated. I know that the families who you have helped will benefit not only today, but well into the future. And so thank you for what you do every single day.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Of course. Yeah, it was great working with you guys. We are now going to, like I said, move on to another break. Carol will be back with another session at the top of the hour. So take a break, get some coffee if you need it, and we will see you in about 10 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.